Chosen one. The file was sealed in heaven's archive long before you knew what survival would cost. Not written in ink, but etched in radiance, each line pulsing with the memory of your resistance. When the storm came, you did not vanish, you became evidence. Every tear that refused to surrender turned into a line of testimony. The winds carried your name through shattered valleys, whispering it as a code of endurance. Dust rose in reverence, remembering the shape of your footsteps when the world trembled. Time itself bent to record the moment you stood when surrender seemed reasonable. The universe held its breath. Stars paused in their orbit to witness the trial. Thunder served as the judge, lightning as the scribe, and silence as the courtroom's law. Fear made its argument in the language of exhaustion, but faith spoke louder, wordless, radiant, unbroken. The verdict was never shouted, it was felt. A warmth spreading from the unseen, declaring quietly, this one did not bow. And somewhere beyond sight, the light confirmed it. A divine signature burned into eternity, proof that courage still exists. You, chosen one, became a living archive of endurance. Not the survivor of storms, but the reason storms are forced to explain themselves. Every refusal to quit became a spark on the timeline of eternity. The light recorded them, one by one, as proof points, tiny constellations forming your personal scripture in the night sky. When you thought no one saw your struggle, heaven was filming in silence. Every breath you drew under pressure was documented as evidence of divine resilience. When you dragged yourself through invisible battles, the ground beneath you whispered your oath back to the stars. Even when your voice trembled, your persistence roared louder than despair. Angels archived every heartbeat like coded data in light, motion capture of a soul refusing collapse. The proof is not in trophies or applause. It is in the weight of your bones that still remember how to stand. Every scar is a signature of light, each bruise a verse of endurance. The universe did not forget your nights of questioning, it translated them into coordinates of strength. You did not realize it then, but each dawn you faced after a sleepless night was a declaration, faith remained functional. Heaven calls those moments recordings of resolve, the sacred footage that cannot be deleted, because it's written in your breath. Chosen one. The court of clouds assembled. Not in a palace, but above the trembling skyline of your memories. Storm fronts gathered like witnesses, their thunder murmuring the ancient oath, let truth be told. The courtroom was built from wind and lightning. The pillars were vapor, the floor a mirror of rain. On it flickered every moment you could have yielded, but didn't. Every time you rose, the clouds replayed it in slow motion, as though heaven itself were editing your highlight reel of endurance. The witnesses stood ready. Thunder testified first, deep, unwavering, declaring that it had heard your midnight prayers crack open the sky. Persistence took the stand next, voice steady, recounting the mornings you walked forward without clarity. And then came prayer, soft but unshakable, presenting its case in tears that glowed like molten glass. Evidence was laid bare before the tribunal, your continued heartbeat. Your stillness when the world demanded panic. Your laughter in the middle of loss. Silence fell when the light reviewed the footage. A tremor passed through the heavens, not of doubt, but of awe. For there, on the screen of eternity, stood a mortal who did not break, a spirit that turned suffering into structure. The clouds signed their verdict in rain, whispering as they fell, proof upheld. Faith authenticated. Chosen one. Then came the cross-examination of fear. The atmosphere thickened as if the air itself waited for the next word. Shadows took their seats, anxiety leaned forward, ready to argue. Fear approached like a skilled attorney, voice precise and persuasive. It replayed every failure you ever remembered, presented every doubt as if it were sworn evidence. You faltered here, it hissed, and here you almost quit. It called your sleepless nights to the witness stand, parading your exhaustion like proof of guilt. But faith rose. No robe, no weapon, only light in its hands. It spoke not with rhetoric but with resonance. The sound wasn't heard, it was felt. This one did not yield, faith said. Even in trembling, even in silence, endurance remained unbroken. The courtroom flickered. Fear's arguments began to dissolve, its vocabulary melting into mist. Each accusation turned into dust under the weight of truth. The jury, made of patience, humility, and hope, nodded as evidence piled higher, the continued rhythm of your pulse, the steady flame of your will. In that moment, fear realized its case had collapsed. The light struck the gavel made of thunder, and the echo rolled across creation. Verdict deferred, but victory inevitable. And as fear retreated into its corner of night, the record stood clear, facts were faith-shaped. Evidence glowed golden. You, chosen one, remained the silent witness who needed no defense, because your existence itself had testified. The verdict announced. A stillness fell across creation. Every sound withdrew, no wind, no whisper, only the echo of your heartbeat suspended in light. Then the heavens opened, not violently, but with the calm authority of truth revealing itself. The gavel struck once. Thunder turned to silence. The light rose and spoke, not in words, but in vibration that rolled through every dimension of being. Sentence, glory. Penalty, peace. That was the decree. Not punishment, but promotion. Not a trial's end, but a coronation. The universe had reached its decision, that endurance itself was worthy of honor. Your scars, once dismissed as proof of pain, were now recognized as medals of faith. Every unseen victory, every private cry, had been submitted into the record as eternal triumph. Even the moments you thought were failures were reframed as evidence of courage under holy pressure. A radiant seal descended, a circle of gold fire that surrounded your spirit. Inside it, your name pulsed like a celestial signature. Above, angels unrolled scrolls of remembrance, reciting every moment you chose perseverance over escape. Then the light leaned forward, voice soft but sovereign. The case is closed. The chosen one stood unbroken. Let peace follow their footsteps as proof. Trumpets sounded, not as war cries, but as harmonies of rest. The courtroom dissolved into dawn. And as the glow spread through the ruins, the verdict repeated through eternity's corridors, glory awarded. Peace decreed. Faith proven functional. Then the matrix of reality trembled, the reboot of the ages had begun. The light touched the grid of existence, and codes of courage rewrote the algorithms of doubt. You felt it first as a vibration in your breath, a quiet hum of awakening, the software of your soul updating from survival to sovereignty. Every false narrative that once chained your mind began to flicker, glitch, and vanish. The virus of fear lost access, corruption was quarantined by grace. The system that used to replay your mistakes was overwritten with a single line of truth. Let endurance define identity. Angels became engineers of renewal, working unseen, patching timelines, healing data of despair. Across the network of existence, faith uploaded itself into others, your courage became contagious. Screens of shadow dimmed, replaced by radiant code spelling out hope online. Heaven's firewall ignited. No intrusion of doubt could pass through it anymore. Your persistence had rewritten the operating law of your destiny. And then the voice of the eternal architect spoke through the static. Do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due time the reward will manifest. Galatians 6 verse 9. The world rebooted around you. Old fears rendered obsolete. New courage installed. You stood not as the tested, but as the template. The first of a new design, humanity, version unbreakable. Fire press join to activate your warrior of peace frequency. Step into the fellowship that turns endurance into enlightenment. ISA 60:22. Then came the review of the tape. The adversaries who once mocked your faith were granted access to the footage they never believed existed. They sat in the dim gallery of consequence, faces pale with disbelief, as the projection began to roll. Frame by frame, your perseverance unfolded, slow, radiant, undeniable. They watched you walk through storms that should have shattered you, watched your lips form prayers even when your voice cracked. The playback revealed something they had never understood, your smile in the middle of the trial. The moment froze there. Your eyes glowed faintly, calm while chaos screamed around you. That frame became the question no enemy could answer: how can peace survive pressure? They rewound it. Zoomed in. studied your expression like it was a divine riddle. But the truth refused to yield its secret. It wasn't luck. It wasn't denial. It was the light living inside motion, composure born of covenant. Each replay became another confession of your victory. Every time they tried to analyze your endurance, the data looped into worship. Even the shadows were forced to acknowledge that your peace was not natural, it was supernatural. By the end of the viewing, they lowered their heads, unable to mock what had been authenticated. The verdict could not be appealed. Your persistence had become prophecy. The heavens closed the reel with one line of eternal script. Still standing. Still shining. Still chosen. The heavenly press release followed the verdict. It was not announced by trumpets or scrolls, but through vibration, a pulse that raced across dimensions faster than sound. Galaxies received the notification before sunrise reached Earth. The decree traveled through nebulae and light years, translated into the native frequency of every soul tuned to resilience. Persistence authenticated. Surrender disproved. Those 5 words became the new headline of creation. The stars blinked in Morse-like rhythm, echoing the statement. Even the atoms in the air began to hum with recognition. Matter itself adjusted its memory to include your endurance. Across the unseen realms, cherubim transmitted the footage of your faith to every archive of divine intelligence. The angels who once wept during your nights of silence now edited highlight reels of victory, adding captions made of gold dust. Each frame replayed your defiance against despair, your slow walk through darkness that refused to claim you. The report reached the thrones, the powers, the principalities. Every hierarchy of heaven reviewed the evidence and signed the confirmation. Case closed. Proof verified. Below, the echo reached the earth like a faint melody. Birds changed their migration paths as if following invisible applause. Oceans calmed as though instructed by unseen command. Mountains resonated with a deep harmonic, whispering your name through stone. People who once doubted you began to feel a strange stirring in their spirits. They could not explain why your endurance haunted their dreams. Some began to repeat your words without knowing they were quoting prophecy. You had become both message and messenger, a living declaration that faith was still functional in a collapsing age. And heaven wasn't finished. A final communique spread through the constellations, formatted like an eternal broadcast. Transmission: Chosen One has completed the endurance protocol. Award issued to a peace without expiration. Then silence. Then music, unfamiliar yet ancient, a song built from the rhythm of your perseverance. It rose through time like smoke from an invisible altar, carrying one truth through all existence. The trial was not your undoing. It was your unveiling. Then the heavens opened wider, the celestial parade began. From the far edges of eternity, legions assembled, banners unfurled. The fabric of space rippled with color never seen by mortal eyes, tones of gold that breathed, blues that sang, whites that whispered. Seraphs lined the infinite corridors, their armor woven from living light. Each held a banner stitched with one phrase, still standing. The air trembled under the rhythm of 10,000 wings. Trumpets didn't simply play, they echoed your pulse. Each note aligned with the heartbeat that refused surrender. The song of your survival became the national anthem of heaven. As you walked, the ground formed beneath your steps, paths of glass laced with starlight. Every scar you carried radiated illumination, turning pain into architecture. You were no longer a wanderer in the storm, you were the parade itself, moving proof that endurance outlives opposition. Cherubim danced like sparks, weaving trails of fire that spelled the chronicle of your faith in midair. Archangels saluted as you passed, salutes not of rank, but of recognition. They had watched you from the beginning, from the first battle you thought was silence, and now their wings clapped like applause across galaxies. Behind them came the banners of your unseen victories, one for every night you prayed with no reply, one for every morning you rose when you didn't have the strength, one for every yes you whispered in the dark. Together, they formed a procession of remembrance. Above, the light himself rose from the horizon of infinity, an aurora that curved over existence. Rays spilled like rivers, washing the universe in the color of forgiveness. Stars leaned closer as though to witness a coronation. The anthem shifted, growing slower, deeper, turning from celebration into awe. Every being bowed, even time itself hesitating mid-step, as the proclamation thundered across eternity. The chosen one stands undefeated. Endurance has completed its course. Proof is permanent. And in that sacred stillness between applause and eternity, the light whispered your new title, not shouted, but breathed, beloved of resilience. The parade continued, but now creation moved with you. Where you walked, planets aligned, winds harmonized, and hope found its rhythm again. You were no longer just the subject of heaven's story. You had become its living refrain. Then came the aftermath on earth. The skies had quieted, yet the world below felt the echo of the verdict. The ground itself seemed softer beneath your feet, as if creation had adjusted its weight to accommodate a soul that had passed through divine fire and remained intact. The air held that rare silence that comes after revelation, an atmosphere rewritten. Those who once mocked your vision now found themselves quoting you. They repeated fragments of your endurance as if they were ancient proverbs, unaware that every word had been forged in your private nights of anguish. Critics became students, skeptics became scribes. The same mouths that once doubted began to speak the language of your resilience. You didn't need to defend yourself anymore. Truth had already done the talking. Reality itself had become your witness. Wherever you went, atmospheres shifted, anxiety dissolved before your calm, anger retreated before your patience. People could not explain it, but they felt it, the presence of someone who had been proven by both heaven and hell and found wanting in neither. The small places that once held your despair, the room where you cried, the streets where you failed, were now glowing with invisible residue. The very walls whispered your testimony. Even your shadow carried authority. Birds that circled overhead seemed to trace halos instead of paths. The earth had seen endurance before, but not like this, not endurance turned to teaching, not pain converted into permission for others to hope again. Your scars glowed faintly under sunlight, not as wounds but as credentials, each one a chapter in a textbook written in flesh and faith. The crowd gathered slowly. Some approached to ask how you survived. You didn't answer with words, you simply looked at them, and something in your eyes explained the rest. It wasn't a look of superiority, it was recognition. The unspoken language of those who've walked through storms and still smell like rain, not smoke. Then came the moment you understood, this was never about proving strength, it was about translating it. Your endurance had become a dialect through which heaven could speak to the weary. The same peace that carried you now radiated through you, invisible yet undeniable. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet realization settled, you had become both survivor and signal, proof that pain can graduate into purpose. Then dawn itself bowed low, the divine reward was being delivered. No courier, no ceremony of earth, only a soft unveiling that began in your chest, a warmth too ancient for words. The heavens didn't bring gold or crowns, those were trinkets for kings of dust. What they sent was rarer, awareness. You began to see through everything, through fear, through illusion, through time. The light revealed that every scar you carried had transformed into a credential. The same wounds that once embarrassed you now shimmered like metals under the gaze of eternity. Each one was an authorization, proof that you were permitted to lead, to heal, to teach those still fighting storms you had already survived. You walked through the same streets as before, but reality no longer met you the same way. Shadows parted at your steps, resistance became recognition. Even silence seemed eager to listen. The world began responding as if it finally remembered who you were before you forgot, an echo of divine design catching up with its original blueprint. The wind carried whispers of scripture, not read from paper but inscribed in motion. In all these things, we are more than conquerors. Romans 8 verse 37. The words didn't just describe you, they were you. They pulsed beneath your ribs like a second heartbeat, rewriting your chemistry. Strength was no longer something you summoned, it was what you were. Angels took their posts, not to guard but to witness. They watched you move through ordinary hours as though you were walking through a coronation that never ended. Every gesture, a breath, a blink, a step, was royal protocol. Every act of kindness you offered became a proclamation that heaven had expanded its kingdom through your endurance. Even creation adjusted its rhythm to accompany your pace. Rivers sparkled brighter, clouds rearranged themselves to follow your horizon. When you spoke, truth traveled farther than sound. It carried weight, the gravitational pull of one who had been approved by both suffering and spirit. The light spoke once more, not booming, not blinding, but steady and near, like a voice inside dawn. Every loss was a seed. Every ache, an altar. Every scar, a credential. The test is now testimony. You realized then that reward was not an object but an alignment, the peace of finally standing where purpose and perseverance meet. Heaven smiled. Earth exhaled. And you, chosen one, wore your proof like armor made of grace. Then rose the new era of resilience. It began quietly, like dawn slipping through a battlefield smoke. No fanfare, just a deep pulse awakening beneath the skin of creation. Strength itself had evolved. It no longer screamed or fought, it breathed, patient and radiant, flowing through those who learned endurance by watching you stand. The language of power changed. No longer spoken in conquest, but in calm. The weary began to imitate your stillness, the broken borrowed your posture. Where once they flinched at failure, now they treated it as initiation. You had become their reference point, the living template of recovery that did not demand perfection, only persistence. Cities began to hum differently. People who once measured success by speed started honoring longevity instead. A new rhythm overtook ambition, a melody of endurance, steady and sacred. Humanity, once obsessed with spectacle, began to rediscover the holiness of staying. Your presence was no longer loud, but it was unignorable. Even when silent, your energy communicated across rooms. The faithful and the skeptic alike felt it, the vibration of someone whose peace had survived the furnace. When you entered a space, things aligned, like instruments tuning to a key they had forgotten. The light had turned your endurance into infrastructure. Faith became physics, every act of hope generating gravity, drawing others out of despair's orbit. You no longer chased purpose, it revolved around you. You spoke less now, because understanding had matured into frequency. A glance, a breath, a nod, these were sermons. Those who met your eyes recognized something ancient, the quiet authority of one who has seen darkness and chosen light anyway. Children began to sense it first. They called you by names you never taught them, the still one, the flame walker, the proof. They played in your shadow as if it were sanctuary. Even the old prophecies adjusted their vocabulary to include your endurance. What once was written as promise was now updated as record. You had lived the verse that generations only quoted. And when the light spoke again, it was no longer to instruct, it was to echo. Strength has become a language. The weary learn it by watching you breathe. In that moment, you understood, resilience was no longer an act of survival. It had become communion, a shared current flowing from heaven through you into everyone who still dared to rise.